The snow falls gently outside the frosted windows of Murphy's Diner, a small roadside establishment just off Highway 95 in upstate New York. It's December 23rd, 1987, and the world feels quieter somehow, wrapped in the hushed anticipation that comes before Christmas. Inside, the familiar sounds of clinking coffee cups and muffled conversations create a symphony of ordinary life. Billy Joel pushes through the heavy glass door, the brass bell above announcing his arrival with a tired chime. He's dressed simply, a worn leather jacket, faded jeans, and a wool scarf pulled tight against the December chill. His face shows the weight of recent months, the exhaustion that comes from living under the constant glare of fame. He's been driving for hours, seeking solitude on empty highways, trying to find something he can't quite name. The diner is nearly empty. A truck driver sits hunched over his coffee at the counter, steam rising from his cup like small prayers. An elderly couple shares a piece of apple pie in a corner booth, their weathered hands touching across the table with the tenderness that comes from 50 years of shared mornings. And behind the counter, moving with practiced efficiency, is a woman who seems to blend into the background of this unremarkable scene. Her name is Dorothy Walsh, though everyone here just calls her Dot. She's 53 years old, with silver-streaked brown hair pulled back in a simple ponytail and kind eyes that have seen too much disappointment to expect miracles anymore. She wears the standard uniform, a pale blue dress with Murphy's embroidered in red script above the pocket, comfortable shoes worn thin from countless double shifts, and a name tag that's slightly crooked because the pin has loosened over the years. Billy slides into a booth near the window, choosing a spot where he can watch the snow continue its gentle descent. The vinyl seat crackles softly under his weight, and he notices how the table's surface tells stories. Coffee ring stains, scratches from countless plates, initials carved by teenagers who probably have grandchildren now. Dot approaches with a coffee pot in one hand and a menu tucked under her arm. She moves without hurry, her steps measured and quiet. There's something about her presence that suggests she's learned to take up as little space as possible, to be helpful without being noticed. "Evening," she says, her voice warm but reserved. She doesn't look directly at him as she fills his cup, steam rising between them like a curtain. "Menu?" "Thank you," Billy replies, accepting both the coffee and the laminated menu. Their fingers brush briefly during the exchange, and he notices her hands. They're working hands, lined and strong, but there's something graceful about the way she moves them, almost musical. As Dot returns to her station behind the counter, Billy finds himself watching her. There's a rhythm to her work that draws his attention. She wipes down surfaces with long, even strokes, her movements unconsciously keeping time with the soft rock playing from the small radio near the register. When she thinks no one is looking, he catches her humming along, her voice barely audible but perfectly in tune. The bell chimes again, and three men in expensive overcoats enter, their voices loud and their demeanor demanding. They're city types, probably heading home from some holiday party, their words slightly slurred and their laughter too sharp for the quiet atmosphere of the diner. "Table for three," the tallest one announces, not bothering to wait for Dot to acknowledge him. They slide into the large booth across from Billy, their conversation immediately dominating the space. Dot approaches them with the same quiet professionalism she showed Billy, but their response is entirely different. They bark their orders without looking at her, treating her like a piece of furniture that happens to dispense food. When she politely asks if they'd like to hear the evening specials, one of them waves her away dismissively. "Just bring us 3 coffees and whatever passes for food in this dump," he says, not bothering to look up from his phone. "And make it fast. We've got places to be." Billy watches this exchange with growing discomfort. He's seen this behavior before, the casual cruelty that some people display toward those they consider beneath them. But there's something about the way Dot handles it that catches his attention. She doesn't react with anger or hurt pride. Instead, she simply nods and moves away, maintaining her dignity even in the face of their rudeness. As the evening progresses, the men's behavior only worsens. They complain about everything. The coffee is too weak, the food takes too long, the temperature in the diner is too cold. They make increasingly personal comments about Dot, questioning her intelligence, mocking her appearance, treating her like she's invisible, except when they need something to criticize. Billy finds his hands clenching into fists under the table. He's fought his own battles with difficult audiences and hostile critics, but watching this quiet woman endure such treatment stirs something protective in him. Still, he restrains himself, uncertain of his place in this small-town dynamic. The breaking point comes when one of the men spills his coffee deliberately, watching the dark liquid spread across the table and drip onto the floor. "Oops," he says with mock innocence. "Better clean that up, sweetheart, and bring me a fresh cup while you're at it." Dot appears with cleaning supplies within moments, her movements efficient and unbothered. But Billy sees what the others miss, the slight tremor in her hands, the way she presses her lips together to keep from speaking, the careful control she exercises over her expression. As she kneels to clean the spilled coffee from the floor, one of the men makes a comment that crosses every line of decency. Billy doesn't even register standing up. He simply finds himself on his feet, his chair scraping against the linoleum floor. "That's enough," he says, his voice carrying the authority of someone accustomed to commanding attention. The diner falls silent, except for the soft Christmas music still playing from the radio. The men turn to look at him, their expressions shifting from amusement to annoyance. The leader, the one who spilled the coffee, sizes Billy up with the calculating gaze of someone who's used to intimidating others. "Excuse me," he says, his voice laden with threat. "This is a private conversation." "Actually, it's not," Billy replies, stepping closer to their table. "Everyone in this diner has been forced to listen to your conversation, and frankly, we've heard enough." The tension in the room is palpable. The truck driver at the counter has turned to watch, his coffee forgotten. The elderly couple has stopped eating, their eyes wide with concern. Dot remains frozen in place, a cleaning cloth clutched in her hand. "Look, buddy," the man says, rising from his seat. He's taller than Billy, broader in the shoulders, and clearly confident in his physical advantage. "I don't know who you think you are, but my name is Billy Joel," Billy says simply. "And right now, I'm someone who's asking you to treat this lady with the respect she deserves." Recognition flickers across the men's faces, but instead of backing down, they seem emboldened by the presence of a celebrity. The leader smirks, sensing an opportunity for a story he can tell at parties. "Billy Joel," he repeats, his voice dripping with sarcasm. "The piano man himself. What are you going to do, sing us a song about it?" The mockery in his voice is designed to wound, to reduce Billy to nothing more than an entertainer for their amusement. But Billy has faced worse critics than these small-minded bullies, and he stands his ground. "I'm going to ask you one more time to apologize to this woman and leave," Billy says, his voice steady and calm. "After that, I won't ask." The confrontation might have escalated further, but something unexpected happens. Dot rises slowly from where she's been cleaning, setting aside the cloth with deliberate precision. When she speaks, her voice carries a quiet strength that fills the diner. "Gentlemen," she says, addressing the three men directly for the first time, "I think it would be best if you finished your meal and moved on. The weather's getting worse, and you'll want to reach your destination safely." There's no anger in her voice, no demand for apology or acknowledgement of the wrong they've done her. Instead, she speaks with the calm authority of someone who has learned to diffuse situations through grace rather than force. It's a masterclass in dignity, and it leaves the men with nothing to push against. Faced with her composure and Billy's protective stance, the men find their bravado deflating. They throw money on the table with exaggerated gestures and file out of the diner, muttering under their breath but unwilling to escalate further. The silence that follows their departure is different from the quiet that came before. It's cleaner somehow, as if the air itself has been purified by their absence. Billy remains standing for a moment, watching through the window as their car pulls back onto the highway. When he turns back to the diner, he finds Dot watching him with an expression he can't quite read. "You didn't have to do that," she says softly. "Yes, I did," Billy replies, returning to his seat. Nobody deserves to be treated that way. Dot pours him a fresh cup of coffee, her hands steady once again. "In my experience, there are two kinds of people in the world," she says, her voice thoughtful. "Those who build others up and those who tear them down. Most folks fall somewhere in between, but every once in a while you meet someone who falls clearly on one side or the other." Billy studies her face as she speaks. There's wisdom there, earned through years of observation and experience. "Which kind am I?" he asks. She smiles then, and it transforms her entire face. "I think you already know the answer to that." As the evening deepens and the snow continues to fall, Billy finds himself lingering in the diner long past the time he originally intended to stay. The truck driver has departed, and the elderly couple has finished their pie and headed home, leaving Billy and Dot as the primary occupants of the quiet space. She moves through her closing routine with the same measured precision she applies to everything else, wiping down tables, refilling salt shakers, counting the till. But Billy notices she hums while she works, soft melodies that seem to flow from her unconsciously. "You have a beautiful voice," he says during a lull in her humming. Dot pauses, cloth in hand, and looks at him with surprise. "I'm sorry, I didn't realize I was doing that. Bad habit." "Not bad at all," Billy assures her. "Quite the opposite, actually." "Do you sing professionally?" She laughs, but there's no humor in it. "Hardly. I work double shifts 6 days a week. When would I have time for singing?" "But you love it," Billy observes. "It's not a question." Dot sets down the cloth and looks out the window at the falling snow. For a long moment she doesn't respond. When she finally speaks, her voice carries the weight of dreams deferred and opportunities lost. "I used to write songs," she admits, "back when I was young and foolish enough to think that mattered." "It does matter," Billy says immediately. "Music always matters." She turns to face him fully, and he sees something vulnerable in her expression. "Not when you're 53 years old and working in a diner to pay rent on a trailer that's falling apart around you." The honesty of her statement hits Billy like a physical blow. He's spent his career surrounded by people who see music as a commodity, a path to fame and fortune. But here's someone who clearly understands its deeper value, who loves it purely for what it is, not what it might bring her. "Would you sing something for me?" he asks gently. Dot shakes her head immediately. "Oh no, I couldn't. It's been years since I've sung for anyone but myself." "The best kind of singing," Billy says, "the kind you do when nobody's listening." Something in his tone, perhaps the genuine interest or the complete absence of judgment, causes her to reconsider. She glances around the empty diner, then back at Billy. "There's one song," she says hesitantly, "something I wrote a long time ago, but it's probably terrible. I never had any formal training or anything." "The best songs rarely come from formal training," Billy tells her. "They come from here." He places his hand over his heart. Dot takes a deep breath, gathering courage from some deep well within herself. When she begins to sing, her voice is soft at first, uncertain, but as the melody develops, she gains confidence, and Billy hears something that makes his own heart skip. Her song is simple in structure but profound in emotion. It tells the story of a woman who gave up her dreams to care for others. First her sick mother, then her unemployed husband, then her struggling children. It speaks of sacrifice without self-pity, of love expressed through service, of finding beauty in the most ordinary moments of an extraordinary life. The melody is haunting, with a classic structure that speaks to Billy's trained ear. But more than the technical aspects, it's the raw emotion in her voice that captivates him. This isn't performance, it's pure expression, the kind of authentic communication that most artists spend their entire careers trying to achieve. When she finishes, the silence in the diner feels sacred. Billy sits motionless, afraid that speaking might somehow diminish what he's just experienced. "I told you it was probably terrible," Dot says, misreading his silence for criticism. "Dot," Billy says, his voice thick with emotion, "that was one of the most beautiful songs I've ever heard." She looks at him skeptically, clearly assuming he's just being polite. "You don't have to say that." "I never say anything I don't mean, especially about music," Billy replies. "That song, it's real. It comes from a place that most songwriters spend their whole lives trying to find." Dot busies herself with cleaning, uncomfortable with the praise. "It's just something I scribbled down on a napkin during my break a few years ago. Nothing special." "Do you have other songs?" Billy asks. "A few," she admits, "probably 20 or 30 over the years. But they're just for me, you know. Something to help me make sense of things when life gets overwhelming." Billy leans forward in his seat. "Dot, would you mind if I asked you a personal question?" She stops cleaning and looks at him warily. "I suppose. What happened to your dreams? The singing, the songwriting? What made you put it aside?" The question hangs in the air between them. Dot sets down her cleaning supplies and slides into the booth across from Billy, as if the weight of the answer requires her to sit down. "Life happened," she says simply. "My mother got sick when I was 22. Cancer. I was supposed to go to Nashville that summer, had everything planned out, but she needed someone to take care of her, and I was the only one who could do it." She pauses, lost in memory. "She fought for 3 years. By the time she passed, I was 25, broke and behind on everything. I met my husband Frank at the hospital. He was a maintenance worker there. Good man, kind heart, but not much ambition." Billy listens without interruption, sensing that this might be the first time she's told this story in its entirety. "We got married, had 2 kids, Sarah and Michael. Frank got laid off when the factory closed, couldn't find steady work after that. Started drinking too much, stopped looking for jobs. I took whatever work I could find to keep us afloat." Her voice remains steady, but Billy can see the pain in her eyes. The kids needed things: clothes, school supplies, medicine when they got sick. There was never money for extras, never time for anything that wasn't absolutely necessary. "What happened to Frank?" Billy asks gently. "Heart attack 5 years ago," Dot says matter-of-factly. "By then, the kids were grown and gone. Sarah's a nurse in Buffalo, married with 2 little ones. Michael's in the army, stationed in Germany. They're good kids, both of them. They send money when they can." Billy processes this information, understanding now why she carries herself with such quiet strength. She's survived losses that would have broken many people, and she's done it with grace and dignity. "Do your children know about your music?" he asks. Dot shakes her head. "I never wanted them to think I resented the choices I made, because I don't," she adds quickly. "Every decision I made out of love. I'd make them again. But that doesn't mean there isn't room for regret," Billy observes. "No," she agrees softly. "It doesn't." They sit in comfortable silence for a moment, the weight of her story settling between them. Outside, the snow has intensified, creating a cocoon of white around the diner. "Can I tell you something?" Billy says eventually. Dot nods. "I've been in the music business for most of my adult life. I've worked with incredible musicians, talented songwriters, people with technical skills that would amaze you. But what you have, that authentic voice, those honest lyrics, it's rarer than you might think." "You're very kind," Dot says, but Billy can tell she still doesn't quite believe him. "I'm not being kind. I'm being honest." Billy pauses, then makes a decision that will change both their lives. "Dot, I want to ask you something, and I want you to really think about it before you answer." She looks at him expectantly. "What if it's not too late? What if there's still time for your music?" Dot's expression shifts from polite attention to something approaching alarm. "Oh, Billy, that's a lovely thought, but I'm 53 years old. Nobody wants to hear songs from a middle-aged waitress." "The music industry might not," Billy admits, but the world does. The world needs authentic voices, especially now. It needs songs that come from real experience, real heartbreak, real love. He leans forward, his enthusiasm building. Do you still have those songs you wrote? The ones on napkins and scraps of paper? Some of them, Dot says hesitantly. Why? Because I think we should do something with them. The suggestion hangs in the air like a challenge. Dot stares at Billy as if he suggested they fly to the moon together. Do something with them, she repeats slowly. Like what? Like record them, Billy says simply. Like make an album. Dot's laugh is sharp and disbelieving. An album? Billy, I appreciate what you're trying to do, but that's impossible. I don't have money for studio time. I don't have connections. I don't have anything except a voice and some old songs that probably aren't even any good. You have something much more valuable than any of those things, Billy tells her. You have truth. And I have everything else. The studio, the connections, the resources. What I don't have is what you have. The offer is so unexpected, so generous, that Dot can't immediately process it. She stares at Billy as if trying to determine whether he's serious or if this is some elaborate joke. You don't even know me, she says finally. You don't know if my songs are worth recording. I heard one of them, Billy reminds her, and it was worth recording. If the others are half as good. But why? Dot interrupts. Why would you do this for a stranger? Billy considers the question carefully. Because 30 years ago, someone believed in me when nobody else would. Because I've spent most of my career surrounded by people who see music as a business instead of an art. Because you remind me why I started playing in the first place. He pauses, then adds quietly, and because everyone deserves a chance to be heard. Dot's eyes fill with tears she doesn't let fall. I can't accept something like that from you. It wouldn't be right. It would be the rightest thing I've done in years, Billy counters. Look, I'm not promising you'll become rich and famous. I'm not even promising anyone will buy the album. But I'm promising that your songs will be recorded properly with respect and care, and that at least one copy will exist for your children and grandchildren to hear someday. The mention of her children and future grandchildren strikes a chord that Billy sees resonate in her expression. For the first time since he made the offer, she doesn't immediately refuse. I need time to think, she says eventually. Of course, Billy agrees. But while you're thinking, would you mind singing me another song? I'd like to hear more of your work before I drive back to New York. Dot glances at the clock on the wall. It's nearly midnight, well past closing time, but she makes no move to hurry him along. Instead, she considers his request. There's one I wrote after Frank died, she says slowly. It's about starting over when you thought your story was finished. I'd love to hear it, Billy says. This time, Dot sings with more confidence from the beginning. The song is different from the first, more hopeful, despite its subject matter of loss and renewal. It speaks of discovering strength you didn't know you had, of finding beauty in unexpected places, of learning that endings can also be beginnings. As she sings, Billy finds himself thinking about his own life, his own recent struggles with doubt and creative burnout. Her lyrics speak to universal experiences, loss, resilience, the courage to keep going when everything feels uncertain. When she finishes, Billy doesn't speak immediately. Instead, he stands up and walks to the old upright piano tucked in the corner of the diner. It's clearly been there for decades, its wood scarred and its ivory keys yellowed with age. Does this thing work? He asks, running his fingers experimentally across the keys. It's out of tune, Dot warns. Nobody's played it in years. Billy strikes a chord anyway, wincing slightly at the sound. Out of tune, but not dead, he observes. He begins to play softly, finding a melody that complements the song Dot just sang. Come here, he says, gesturing for her to join him. Dot approaches hesitantly. I can't play, she admits. That's okay. Just sing your song again, but this time let me accompany you. What happens next is pure magic. Despite the piano's imperfections and Dot's nervousness, their collaboration creates something beautiful. Billy's accompaniment doesn't overpower her voice but supports it, adding harmonic depth to her melody without losing its essential simplicity. As they play together, something shifts in the atmosphere of the diner. What began as an impromptu performance becomes something deeper, a moment of pure artistic communion between two people who understand music's power to heal and transform. When the song ends, they remain at the piano for a moment, both aware that something significant has just occurred. That felt, begins, then stops, unable to find the words. Like music is supposed to feel, Billy finishes for her. She nods, understanding exactly what he means. Billy says gently, I meant what I said about recording your songs, but even if you decide against it, promise me you won't stop writing them. Promise me you won't let that voice go silent. I promise, she says, and Billy can tell she means it. Billy looks at his watch and realizes how late it's gotten. I should let you finish closing up and get home. Where are you staying tonight? Asks, suddenly concerned. The roads are getting bad and the nearest motel is 20 miles away. I'll be fine, Billy assures her. I've driven in worse weather. But as he prepares to leave, Dot makes a decision that surprises them both. There's a couch in the back office, she says. It's not much, but it's warm and dry. Owner won't mind. He's stuck at his daughter's house anyway because of the storm. Billy starts to decline, but something in her expression stops him. He realizes that her offer isn't just about his safety. It's about extending their conversation, their connection, for just a little while longer. If you're sure it's no trouble, he says. No trouble at all, Dot replies. In fact, if you don't mind helping me finish the closing tasks, I could show you more of my songs. They're in a notebook I keep in my locker. Billy smiles. I'd like that very much. For the next hour, they work together to close the diner. Billy washes dishes while Dot counts money and wipes down equipment. Their conversation flows easily, touching on everything from music theory to the challenges of small-town life. Billy finds himself sharing stories from his career that he rarely tells anyone. Not the glamorous anecdotes that make good interviews, but the quiet moments of doubt and discovery that shape an artist's journey. When the cleaning is finished, Dot retrieves a worn composition notebook from her employee locker. Its pages are filled with handwritten lyrics, musical notations, and margin notes in her careful script. They settle in the back office, Billy on the small couch, Dot in the desk chair, and she begins to share her collection. Some songs are complete, others are fragments of ideas waiting to be developed. They span decades of her life, documenting her experiences as a daughter, wife, mother, and survivor. Each song reveals another layer of her character. There's a lullaby she wrote for her children, full of gentle wisdom and protective love. There's a bittersweet piece about watching her hometown change as young people leave for opportunities elsewhere. There's a surprisingly humorous song about the characters who frequent the diner, capturing their quirks with affection rather than judgment. But it's the last song in the notebook that moves Billy most deeply. Written just a few months earlier, it's titled The Song I Never Sang. It's a meditation on dreams deferred, on the paths not taken, on the music that lives in hearts but never reaches ears. This one, Billy says after she finishes reading the lyrics aloud, this one is extraordinary. Dot closes the notebook, suddenly self-conscious. It's probably too personal. The best songs always are, Billy tells her. Personal truth becomes universal truth when it's expressed honestly enough. They talk until nearly dawn, their conversation ranging across music, life, dreams, and the courage required to pursue both. Billy shares his own struggles with creative doubt, the pressure of commercial success, and the constant challenge of staying true to his artistic vision while meeting industry expectations. Sometimes I forget why I started playing, he admits. The business side of music can overshadow everything else. But tonight, listening to your songs, watching you share something so pure and honest, it reminds me of what really matters. What's that? Dot asks. The connection, Billy says. The moment when a song reaches someone and they understand that they're not alone in what they're feeling. As the first light of dawn begins to filter through the diner's windows, Billy makes a decision that will change both their lives forever. "Dot," he says, "I want to make you a proposition." She looks at him curiously. "Give me 2 weeks. Come to New York, stay in my guest house, and let's record an album of your songs. Not as a favor to you, but as a gift to the world. Your voice deserves to be heard." The offer hangs in the air between them, more life-changing than anything either of them could have imagined 12 hours earlier. "I can't just leave work," Dot protests. "I can't abandon my responsibilities." "What if we could work something out with your boss?" Billy asks. "What if we could frame it as a sabbatical rather than abandonment?" Dot shakes her head. "Murphy can barely keep this place running as it is. He can't afford to hold my job for 2 weeks while I go off chasing impossible dreams." "What if he didn't have to hold your job? What if he could hire a temporary replacement and pay them with money that wouldn't come out of his pocket?" Understanding dawns in Dot's expression. "Billy, you can't just pay for someone to cover my shifts. That's too much." "It's not too much if it means your songs get recorded," Billy insists. "And it's not charity, it's an investment. I believe in your music, Dot. I believe it has value." The debate continues for another hour, with Dot raising every practical objection she can imagine, and Billy calmly addressing each one. Her resistance isn't based on stubbornness, but on a lifetime of cautious decision-making, of putting others' needs before her own dreams. "What if the album is terrible?" she asks finally. "What if we spend all this time and money, and it turns out I'm just a middle-aged woman with delusions of talent? Then we'll have 2 weeks of making music together," Billy replies, "and that will be enough." The simplicity of his answer, the absence of pressure or expectation, finally breaks through her defenses. "You really believe my songs are worth recording?" she asks quietly. "I really do." Dot sits in silence for a long moment, staring out at the snowy landscape visible through the office window. Billy waits patiently, understanding that this decision will reshape her understanding of herself and her possibilities. "Okay," she says finally, so softly he almost doesn't hear her. "Okay? Okay, I'll do it." She looks at him with a mixture of terror and excitement. "I'll come to New York and record my songs." The smile that spreads across Billy's face is brighter than the dawn breaking outside. "You won't regret this, Dot. I promise you won't regret this." What follows is a whirlwind of planning and preparation. Billy calls his manager from the diner's payphone, explaining the situation and arranging for studio time. He contacts Murphy directly, negotiating Dot's temporary leave with such charm and generosity that the diner owner agrees immediately. "But I want a signed copy of that album when it's finished," Murphy tells Dot with a grin. "I always knew you had music in you." The drive to New York takes place 3 days later. Dot sits in the passenger seat of Billy's car, a small suitcase in the back, containing everything she owns that might be suitable for a recording session. She's nervous, more nervous than she's ever been in her life, but also exhilarated by the magnitude of what's happening. Billy's recording studio is located in a converted warehouse in Long Island, a professional facility with state-of-the-art equipment and a comfortable, welcoming atmosphere. When they arrive, Dot is intimidated by the technical complexity of the mixing board and the array of microphones and instruments. "It's a lot to take in," Billy acknowledges, seeing her overwhelmed expression. "But remember, all of this is just tools. The most important thing we're bringing to this studio is already inside you." The first day is spent simply getting comfortable. Billy introduces Dot to his sound engineer, a patient man named Tom, who immediately puts her at ease with his gentle manner and obvious expertise. They experiment with microphone placement, test various acoustic settings, and work on arrangements for her songs. Billy's approach to production is collaborative rather than controlling. He offers suggestions for instrumentation and harmony, but always defers to Dot's instincts about how her songs should sound. His role is to enhance what's already there rather than impose his own vision. The breakthrough comes on the third day, when they're working on The Song I Never Sang. Dot has been struggling with self-consciousness, too aware of the recording equipment to lose herself in the music. But something about this particular song, perhaps its deeply personal nature, allows her to transcend her nervousness. When she begins to sing, the studio falls silent, except for her voice and Billy's gentle piano accompaniment. The raw emotion in her performance is palpable, filling the room with the weight of dreams deferred and the courage required to pursue them despite the passage of time. When the take is finished, Tom looks up from the mixing board with tears in his eyes. "That was it," he says simply. "That's the one." Billy nods in agreement. "Dot, do you know what you just did?" She shakes her head, still coming down from the intensity of the performance. "You sang a song that's going to change people's lives," Billy tells her. "You gave voice to something that millions of people feel but can't express." From that moment forward, the recording process becomes smoother and more natural. Dot gains confidence with each song, learning to trust her instincts and embrace the vulnerability that makes her music so powerful. They work on 12 songs in total, creating a complete album that tells the story of a woman's journey through love, loss, sacrifice, and ultimately redemption. The arrangements are simple but sophisticated, allowing Dot's voice and lyrics to remain the focus while providing rich harmonic support. Billy contributes piano, keyboard, and occasional harmony vocals, but he's careful never to overshadow Dot's presence. This is her album, her statement, her chance to finally be heard. The final song they record is the lullaby she wrote for her children years earlier. As she sings it, Billy can envision her as a young mother, tired from working double shifts, but still finding the strength to offer comfort and love through music. The tenderness in her voice transforms the studio into a nursery, filled with the gentle protection of maternal devotion. When they finish the last take, the silence that follows is profound. 12 days of intensive work have culminated in something none of them fully anticipated, an album of stunning emotional depth and artistic integrity. "What do we call it?" Dot asks as they review the final mixes. Billy doesn't hesitate. "The Song She Never Sang," he says, "because now you have." The album release is handled carefully, with Billy using his industry connections to ensure it reaches the right ears. Rather than pursuing mainstream commercial success, they focus on outlets that appreciate authentic, mature artistry. Folk music magazines, public radio stations, venues that prioritize substance over style. The response exceeds everyone's expectations. Critics praise Dot's honest songwriting and emotionally rich vocal performances. More importantly, listeners connect deeply with her music, flooding radio stations and record stores with requests for more information about this mysterious new artist. The success culminates in an invitation to perform at Carnegie Hall, part of a benefit concert for working musicians. The prospect terrifies Dot, but with Billy's encouragement and accompaniment, she agrees. The night of the performance, Dot stands in the wings of one of America's most prestigious venues, wearing a simple black dress that Billy insisted on buying for her. Her hands tremble slightly as she watches the sold-out audience settle into their seats. "I can't believe I'm here," she whispers to Billy. "You earned this," he reminds her. "Every person in that audience is here because your music moved them." When they walk onto the stage together, the applause is warm and welcoming. Billy takes his place at the piano, while Dot approaches the microphone with measured steps. "Good evening," she says, her voice carrying clearly through the hall despite her nervousness. "6 months ago, I was working the night shift at a diner in upstate New York. I never imagined I'd be standing here, sharing my songs with all of you. But life has a way of surprising us when we least expect it." She pauses, gathering courage from the supportive silence of the audience. "These songs come from a very ordinary life, the life of a woman who raised children, lost a husband, worked double shifts to pay the bills, and somehow found music in the midst of all that struggle. If they speak to you tonight, it's because we've all faced moments when we wondered if our dreams still mattered. The first song she performs is The Song I Never Sang, and from the opening notes, the audience is completely captivated. Her voice, now seasoned by months of professional recording and performance, carries every nuance of emotion with masterful control. But it's still unmistakably the same authentic voice that Billie first heard in the diner. Honest, vulnerable, real. As she moves through her set, Dot transforms before the audience's eyes. The nervous woman who walked onto the stage gradually gives way to a confident artist who has finally found her rightful place. She tells brief stories between songs, sharing the experiences that inspired her lyrics, creating an intimate atmosphere despite the grand setting. When she performs the lullaby she wrote for her children, there isn't a dry eye in the house. The song takes on new dimensions in this setting, becoming not just a mother's love song, but a universal expression of protection and hope passed from one generation to the next. Billie's accompaniment throughout the performance is masterful in its restraint. He provides harmonic support and musical color without ever overshadowing Dot's presence. Their partnership on stage reflects the deep mutual respect that has developed between them. Two artists who understand that the greatest music comes from genuine collaboration rather than ego. The standing ovation that follows their final song lasts nearly 10 minutes. Dot stands at the microphone, tears streaming down her face, overwhelmed by the response to music she once thought no one would ever hear. "Thank you," she says when the applause finally subsides. "Thank you for listening, thank you for understanding, and thank you for reminding me that it's never too late to sing the song in your heart." Backstage after the performance, Dot is surrounded by well-wishers, industry professionals, and fans who want to share how her music has affected them. A middle-aged woman approaches with tears in her eyes. "I'm 58 years old," she tells Dot. "I gave up painting 30 years ago when my husband said it was a waste of time. After hearing your album, I bought paints again last week. Thank you for showing me it's not too late." Similar stories emerge throughout the evening. A man who returns to songwriting after decades of corporate work. A woman who starts a community choir for older adults. A retired teacher who begins writing the novel she always dreamed of finishing. Dot's courage in pursuing her delayed dreams has given others permission to reclaim their own. The album goes on to achieve modest but meaningful commercial success. More importantly, it establishes Dot as a respected voice in the folk music community. She receives invitations to perform at festivals and intimate venues, building a devoted following of listeners who appreciate her authentic approach to songwriting. A year later, Dot is working on her second album when she receives a phone call that changes her perspective on success even more than fame ever could. It's from her daughter Sarah in Buffalo. "Mom," Sarah says, her voice thick with emotion, "I just wanted to thank you." "For what, sweetheart?" "For showing Emma and Michael that it's okay to have dreams. Emma's been asking me all week if she can take piano lessons because she wants to write songs like Grandma Dot. And Michael drew a picture of you on stage at Carnegie Hall. He says when he grows up, he wants to be brave like you." The conversation continues for an hour, with Sarah sharing how Dot's transformation has inspired the entire family. Her son Michael, the soldier, has started writing poetry during his off-duty hours. Sarah herself has begun volunteering at a local music therapy program, discovering a passion for helping others find healing through song. "I'm so proud of you, Mom," Sarah says before they hang up, "not because you're famous or successful, but because you showed us what it means to never give up on yourself." After the call, Dot sits in the guest house where she now lives on Billie's property, surrounded by the tools of her trade: guitars, keyboards, notebooks filled with lyrics, recording equipment that once seemed impossibly sophisticated, but now feels like natural extensions of her creativity. She thinks about the woman she was just over a year ago, tired, resigned, convinced that her dreams were foolish luxuries she couldn't afford. That woman still exists within her, but she's been joined by someone new, an artist who has learned that authenticity is more valuable than youth, that experience creates depth that no amount of technical training can replicate. The diner still operates on Highway 95, though under new management since Murphy retired and moved to Florida. Sometimes Dot drives by during her travels, remembering the night that changed everything. The booth where she first sang for Billy is still there, its vinyl surface bearing the same collection of coffee stains and carved initials. But more often, she looks forward rather than back. Her second album is nearly complete, featuring songs that explore themes of reinvention, second chances, and the courage required to become who you were always meant to be. Critics are already calling it her masterpiece, though Dot knows that her true masterpiece isn't any single collection of songs. It's the life she's built around music, the community she's created through honest expression, the inspiration she's provided to others who thought their time for dreams had passed. Billy remains her closest collaborator and dearest friend. Their partnership has evolved beyond music into a deep friendship based on mutual respect and shared values. He often jokes that producing her first album was the most important work of his career, not because of its commercial success, but because of its impact on both their lives. "You saved my career," he tells her one evening, as they work on arrangements for her new songs. "How did I do that?" Dot asks, genuinely puzzled. "You reminded me why music matters," Billy explains. "You showed me that authenticity trumps everything else: technique, marketing, industry connections. You made me remember that the best songs come from the heart, not the head." Dot considers this as she tunes her guitar. "You know what you did for me? What's that?" "You gave me back my voice," she says simply. "Not just literally, but in every way that matters. You helped me remember that my story was worth telling, my experiences were worth sharing, my dreams were worth pursuing." As they begin to play together, their music fills the studio with the same magic that first brought them together, in a small-town diner on a snowy December night. But now, their collaboration has the depth that comes from shared history, mutual trust, and the knowledge that they've helped each other become better artists and better people. The song they're working on is called Second Chances, and it tells the story of two people who meet at exactly the moment when each most needs what the other can offer. It's not specifically about their own meeting, but anyone who knows their story will hear the parallel. The lyrics speak of recognition, not of faces or names, but of kindred spirits finding each other across the noise and chaos of ordinary life. They tell of the courage required to extend help to a stranger, and the greater courage required to accept that help when it's offered. Most powerfully, they celebrate the transformation that occurs when two people choose to see the best in each other rather than focusing on limitations or failures. As evening settles over the studio, Dot and Billy finish their work on the new song. They sit in comfortable silence, both aware that they've created something special, not just the music, but the entire journey that brought them to this moment. "Do you ever wonder what would have happened if you hadn't stopped at the diner that night?" Dot asks. Billy considers the question seriously. "I think about it sometimes," he admits. "But I don't think it was really chance. I think we were both ready for something to change in our lives. Maybe the universe just provided the opportunity." "You think the universe wanted us to meet?" "I think the universe wants authentic voices to be heard," Billy says. "And sometimes it takes two people believing in each other to make that happen." Dot nods, understanding exactly what he means. Her journey from anonymous waitress to respected recording artist might seem like a fairy tale to outsiders, but she knows the truth is more complex and more beautiful than any fantasy. It's a story about recognizing worth in unexpected places, about the power of encouragement to transform lives, about the courage required to pursue dreams regardless of age or circumstance. But most importantly, it's a story about the fundamental human need to be heard, to be understood, to have our experiences validated through art and expression. In a world that often dismisses older women as invisible or irrelevant, Dot's success represents something revolutionary. The assertion that every voice matters, every story has value, every dream deserves consideration. The phone rings, interrupting their contemplation. It's Tom, the sound engineer, calling with news about the response to their latest recording session. "You're not going to believe this," he says, his excitement evident even through the phone. "I played the rough mix of Second Chances for a friend at the Grammy committee. They want to submit your album for consideration in the folk category." Dot's hand flies to her mouth in shock. The Grammy Awards represent the pinnacle of musical recognition, something she never dared imagine for herself. "Tom, are you serious?" she asks. "Completely serious. Your music has touched people at the highest levels of the industry. They want to honor authentic artistry, and you represent that better than anyone." After Tom hangs up, Dot sits in stunned silence. Billy watches her process this latest development, seeing the mix of disbelief and gradual acceptance cross her features. "How do you feel?" he asks gently. "Overwhelmed," Dot admits. "Grateful, terrified, proud, all at the same time." "That sounds about right." "Those are the emotions with a smile that come with achieving something you never thought possible." They talk long into the night about the implications of Grammy recognition, the increased opportunities it might bring, the pressure that comes with expanded expectations. But eventually, their conversation returns to the core truth that has guided their entire collaboration. "Whatever happens with awards or recognition," Dot says, "I want to remember why we're doing this. It's not about fame or accolades. It's about connection. It's about reaching people who need to hear these songs." "That's exactly right," Billy agrees, "and that's why I know you'll handle whatever comes next with the same grace and authenticity you've shown from the beginning." The Grammy nomination becomes official 3 months later, generating a wave of media attention that transforms Dot's quiet success into national recognition. Interviews, photo shoots, and performance requests flood in, but Dot approaches each opportunity with the same thoughtful consideration she applies to everything else in her life. She uses her platform to advocate for older artists, arguing that the music industry's obsession with youth overlooks vast reservoirs of talent and experience. Her message resonates with audiences who have felt marginalized or forgotten, creating a movement of sorts around the idea that creativity has no expiration date. The night of the Grammy Awards arrives with all the pageantry and excitement that defines American popular culture. Dot, now 55, sits in the audience wearing an elegant navy blue gown, her silver hair styled simply, her presence radiating the quiet confidence she's developed over the past 2 years. Billy sits beside her, equally nervous and excited about the outcome. Their category is announced midway through the ceremony, and when Dot's name is called as the winner, the applause that erupts seems to last forever. At the podium, holding her Grammy Award, Dot looks out at an audience that includes many of the most successful musicians in the world, but when she speaks, her words are directed toward a very different group of people. "This award belongs to everyone who has ever believed their dreams were too late, too small, or too foolish to pursue," she says, her voice steady and clear. "It belongs to the single mothers working double shifts, the caregivers sacrificing their own ambitions for others, the dreamers who think their time has passed." She pauses, looking directly into the camera that's broadcasting her words to millions of viewers. "I want to tell you something I wish someone had told me 30 years ago. Your story matters. Your voice deserves to be heard, and it is never, never too late to become who you were always meant to be." The speech becomes one of the most shared moments in Grammy history, inspiring countless people to reconsider their own abandoned dreams and delayed aspirations. Social media fills with stories of people returning to art, music, writing, and other creative pursuits they had set aside for practical concerns. Dot's influence extends far beyond music. She becomes a symbol of possibility, proof that transformation can occur at any stage of life if we have the courage to embrace it. Her story is featured in documentaries about second chances, academic studies about late-life creativity, and countless magazine articles about finding purpose after traditional career expectations have been fulfilled. But perhaps the most meaningful recognition comes in a letter from a woman named Margaret, who writes from a small town in Iowa. "Dear Dot," the letter begins, "I am 72 years old, and I have been writing poetry in secret for 50 years. After hearing your music and your story, I finally shared my poems with my family. My granddaughter is helping me put together a book of my work. We're going to self-publish it next month. I wanted you to know that your courage gave me the permission I needed to stop hiding my gift. Thank you for showing me that it's never too late to let our light shine." The letter arrives on a Tuesday morning as Dot sits in her studio, working on songs for her third album. She reads it twice, then calls Billy to share Margaret's words. "Do you realize what you've done?" Billy asks after hearing the letter. "You've given people more than music. You've given them hope." "We've given them hope," Dot corrects. "This never would have happened without your belief in my songs." "No," Billy says firmly. "The songs were always there. The talent was always there. I just helped create the opportunity for others to hear what I heard that first night in the diner." Their conversation is interrupted by the arrival of a package. Inside, Dot finds a collection of handwritten songs from aspiring songwriters around the country, people inspired by her story to begin writing their own music. Some are teenagers, others are seniors, but all share the common thread of finding courage through her example. Dot spends the afternoon reading through the submissions, marveling at the variety of voices and experiences represented in these amateur but heartfelt compositions. One song, written by a retired carpenter, brings tears to her eyes with its simple but profound meditation on the satisfaction of creating something lasting with one's hands. Another, composed by a young mother struggling with postpartum depression, captures the complex emotions of early parenthood with startling honesty and beauty. A third, penned by a Vietnam veteran dealing with PTSD, transforms pain into art with remarkable courage and skill. "Billy," Dot calls to her friend and collaborator, "I have an idea." He joins her in reviewing the submissions, immediately understanding the quality and potential she's recognized in these amateur works. "What if we created a platform for voices like these?" Dot suggests. "What if we used our success to help other people share their stories through music?" The idea evolves over several weeks into a concrete plan. They establish a non-profit organization called Every Voice Matters, dedicated to providing resources, mentorship, and recording opportunities for amateur songwriters who might otherwise never have their music heard. The program begins modestly, with Dot and Billy personally mentoring a dozen selected songwriters through the process of refining their compositions and recording simple demos. But word spreads quickly through social media and music communities, and soon they're receiving hundreds of submissions from aspiring artists around the world. The first compilation album, Songs from the Heart, features 20 tracks by participants in their program. The styles range from country to folk to pop to gospel, but all share the authentic emotional honesty that characterizes Dot's own work. The album's success leads to expanded programming, including workshops, online mentoring, and regional showcases where amateur songwriters can perform for live audiences. What began as a simple desire to help others share their voices grows into a movement that challenges the music industry's traditional gatekeeping structures. 5 years after that snowy night in the diner, Dot finds herself at another crossroads. Her music career has exceeded every expectation, but her impact through Every Voice Matters has become equally important to her sense of purpose. She's been invited to give a keynote speech at a conference on creativity and aging, and as she prepares her remarks, she reflects on the extraordinary journey that brought her to this moment. The woman who once believed her dreams were foolish luxuries has become an advocate for the power of pursuing passion at any age. The waitress who thought her voice didn't matter now helps others discover the value of their own stories. The person who accepted limitation as inevitable has learned that the only real limitations are the ones we impose on ourselves. At the conference, speaking to an audience of artists, academics, and advocates, Dot shares the lessons she's learned about creativity, courage, and the importance of believing in the possibility of transformation. The night I met Billy Joel in that diner, I thought I was just serving coffee to a customer, she tells the audience. I had no idea that our conversation would change both our lives, but that's the thing about meaningful encounters. We often don't recognize them when they're happening. She pauses, looking out at faces that reflect a wide range of ages and experiences. I want to challenge something we often take for granted. The idea that there's a right time for everything, that opportunities have expiration dates, that dreams are the privilege of the young. My experience has taught me that the opposite is true. Sometimes the best time to pursue a dream is when you have the wisdom to understand why it matters. The speech continues for 45 minutes, weaving together personal anecdotes, practical advice, and broader observations about creativity and human potential. But the heart of her message is simple. It is never too late to become who you were meant to be. The standing ovation that follows confirms what Dot has learned through her journey, that her story resonates because it represents possibility. In a culture that often treats aging as decline, she offers an alternative narrative, that every stage of life brings unique gifts, that experience deepens rather than diminishes our capacity for meaningful expression, that the courage to pursue dreams can emerge at any moment if we're willing to embrace it. After the conference, Dot drives through the countryside of upstate New York, eventually finding herself on Highway 95. She stops at Murphy's Diner, now under different ownership, but still serving travelers and locals with the same no-frills hospitality. The current waitress, a young woman named Jessica, doesn't recognize her famous customer. She serves Dot's coffee with efficient friendliness, humming softly as she works, just as Dot once did. "You have a beautiful voice," Dot tells her during a quiet moment. Jessica blushes. "Thank you. I write songs sometimes, but they're probably not very good." "I'd love to hear one sometime," Dot says, leaving her business card along with her tip. A week later, Jessica calls, nervous but excited. She's looked up Dot online and can't believe she met a Grammy winner in the diner where she works. "Would you really want to hear my songs?" Jessica asks. "I really would," Dot assures her. "And I'd like to tell you about a program that might interest you." The conversation leads to Jessica becoming one of the newest participants in Every Voice Matters. Her songs, it turns out, are quite good, full of the same authentic emotion and honest storytelling that characterize the best folk music. 6 months later, Jessica records her first demo, her voice carrying the same nervous excitement that Dot felt in the studio years earlier. Billy, now in his 70s but still passionate about nurturing new talent, provides piano accompaniment with the same generous spirit he showed Dot. "You know what this means?" Billy asks Dot as they listen to Jessica's playback. "What's that?" "The circle is complete. The student has become the teacher." Dot smiles, understanding that he's right. Her journey from waitress to recording artist was remarkable, but her evolution into a mentor and advocate represents perhaps an even greater transformation. She's learned that the most meaningful success isn't personal achievement, but the ability to help others discover their own potential. As she continues to write, record, and perform her own music, Dot never forgets the moment that changed everything. A snowy night, a small diner, and two people who recognize something valuable in each other. That recognition, she knows, is available to all of us if we have the courage to really see each other, to look beyond surfaces and assumptions to the authentic person underneath. Her latest album, released on the 5th anniversary of her Carnegie Hall debut, is titled Still Singing. It features songs about gratitude, growth, and the ongoing nature of personal transformation. The title track includes these lyrics: "I thought my song was over, thought my voice was done, but I learned that every ending can become a new beginning, and the heart that keeps on loving is a heart that's never won, so I'm still singing, still singing, still singing." The album debuts at #1 on the folk charts, but more importantly, it continues to inspire listeners who thought their own chances for meaningful expression had passed. Radio stations report unprecedented response from older listeners who call to say the music has motivated them to pursue long-dormant creative interests. At 57, Dot has found her life's work, not just as a recording artist, but as a living example of the possibility of reinvention. She tours regularly, performs at festivals, and continues to expand Every Voice Matters into new communities and demographic groups. But perhaps her greatest satisfaction comes from the quiet moments in her studio, working with amateur songwriters who remind her of herself just a few years ago. Talented, authentic people who need only encouragement and opportunity to share their gifts with the world. The woman who once thought she was too old, too late, too ordinary to matter has learned that none of those things were true. In discovering her own voice, she's helped countless others find theirs. In pursuing her delayed dreams, she's given permission for others to reclaim their own. The story that began with a chance encounter in a diner has become something larger, a testament to the power of recognition, encouragement, and the courage to believe that transformation is always possible. As Billy Joel said in his speech at Dot's Grammy win, "Sometimes the most beautiful music comes from the most unexpected places. All we have to do is listen." Dot Walsh listened to the music in her own heart and found the courage to share it. In doing so, she discovered that her voice, the voice she thought no one wanted to hear, was exactly what the world needed, and she's still singing. Never underestimate the power of a kind heart to change the world. Sometimes the person you help today will become the inspiration that changes countless other lives tomorrow. Every voice matters. Every dream deserves a chance. And it is never, never too late to become who you were always meant to be. If this story moved you, please like this video, subscribe to our channel, and share your own story in the comments below. What dreams are you still carrying in your heart? What songs are you waiting to sing? Your voice matters more than you know.